All right, this is the follow-up, and we are following up today on exactly two live videos I did, or two topics I did on George's Space Chat. The first being diversifying your efforts, and the second one, Broadway Uncovered. My guest today on the follow-up is none other but the great Kristy Norter. Kristy, thank you so much for making yourself available, and welcome to the follow-up.
Oh, thank you for having me, George. And I've been watching the videos, not all of them, but many of them over the pandemic and et cetera. And I'm just really happy to be here. And thank you so much
Awesome.
for asking.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. No, absolutely. You were on top of my list. I'm glad that we were able to make this happen. For those watching, for those listening, let me give you some background on how I met Kristy. We first met many years ago at the Big Apple Circus. Believe it or not, Kristy was a reeds player at the Big Apple Circus. I was a bass sub, and we've stayed in touch. We've crossed paths many times. Played in the same pits many times, meaning musical theater pits. And right now, Kristy is the reeds player. And are you the contractor of Tina? No, no, you're
Nope,
not.
just
Okay,
yep.
just the reeds player across the street from my theater at Ain't Too Proud. Kristy is at Tina, so we always say hello on
Yeah,
the street. We always cross paths.
yeah.
And I thought Kristy would be a fantastic guest for the two topics that we're about to get into. The first being diversifying your efforts. Now, with the panel discussions about diversifying your efforts, I try to highlight musicians who have a full workload as a musician, and have a different business at the same time. Now, Kristy is a multi-reed player, right? Is there any reed instrument that you don't play?
Double reeds. I don't play
Double
oboe
reeds.
or bassoon.
Okay, well, there we go. Aside
English
from
one.
that, all single reeds, Kristy got you covered. Okay,
Yep.
so
Flutes, piccolo. I
everything.
got you.
That is a lot. That is a lot to handle. That's not an easy task. And being the brilliant player that she is, she's working all the time. Now, at the same time, Kristy has now also branched out into music contracting for theater, for Broadway, off Broadway, and now starting also for tours. Kristy, let me open it up to you. Diversifying your efforts, how did, in terms of diversifying your efforts, how did, you know, what was the transition like for you from being a reed player and then now being a reed player plus contracting?
Sure. I mean, the transition, I think it was somewhat natural in that I'm the kind of person, and I think you are as well, that for me, learning a skill, you learn it from the bottom up.
Right,
So I think one of the ways to be a really effective coordinator, contractor for any job is to know what the job entails. Meaning,
right.
I've subbed on a million off Broadway, Broadway, Radio City, you name it. I've been a chair holder of all of the same and Broadway, and
Right,
I've learned every single position from the bottom up and have
right,
done it many times. And I think often, especially in this music theater industry, like contractors, coordinators, I think the misconception is that the job is hiring musicians, like
right,
hiring a band. And
right,
it's maybe 1%,
right.
especially these days, it's really 1% of the job.
Okay,
The rest of it is anticipating problems. And really, what I say, my job is to advise.
right.
I'm the advisor. I don't decide. I work for the producers. I
Yeah,
advise the general manager. I advise the house manager. I advise the in house contractor. I put together a band, hopefully, of people who are great players, but also great human beings
right.
and are professional and grown ups.
Yeah, yeah,
And then we, order equipment and get everything in the room, anticipate problems, hope we don't have them, and boom.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
as
yeah.
things come up, you figure out a way. But to me, that is a natural progression of being a chairholder.
Right.
And one thing, we joke about, I think was it Phil Woods that was like, oh, you want to be a professional musician? We'll stick someone on a tour bus and drive them in circles for 8 hours and then let them off in the middle of nowhere. And that's how you learn how to, it's a joke, but it's kind of true, right?
There is a lot of truth to that. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. And so as my position as a coordinator, it's like, well, I know I know what it takes to be successful as a chairholder. And
Right.
as an initial chairholder, even of Big Apple Circus, I learned how to manage a chair,
Yeah.
how to take care of the business of managing a chair.
Yeah.
And I think especially I get asked often by younger people, people who move to town, how do I break in? You have to learn the business of managing the chair and managing the show. Everybody can play to some extent.
Yeah.
Playing is only half of it. It's
Yeah.
really the business side of it. And that's the part that gets ignored, I think, in music schools very
Right.
often.
So let me
Yeah.
just jump in right away. When you say the business side, let's
Mm-hmm.
define that. Let's
Yeah.
let's be
100%.
somewhat, get
Yeah,
to the bottom of this. What
absolutely.
do you see as the business side of things?
The business side of things starts with communication.
Right.
Are you the kind of person that will answer messages in a
Yeah.
timely fashion,
Yeah.
in a professional way? Do you double check that email responding to someone who's giving you a job offer before you send it with the wrong date or the wrong time, or how do you manage those little details?
Yeah.
I've given a lot of discussions through Maestra and 802 on the Allegro about subbing, and I always joke about, but it's true.
Yeah.
People think that the audition process is once they're in the room playing, and I'm
Right.
like, no, it starts from the moment we have our first contact.
Yeah.
So if I send you, George, a text and I'm like, hey, I got your name from so and so, I think you'd be a good fit. Would you like to sub for me? And you write back, I joke about it, but yo, poop emoji, rocket ship, and thumbs up. I'm like, what the, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know you. We've started the job interview.
Yeah.
You're like, yeah, what's up? Like, no, we're not friends. I mean, even my close friends, when I hire them or they hire me to sub
Right.
or to work, we send us text that is just the business.
Right.
Hey, George, confirming you tomorrow night, Tuesday, January, whatever the date is at this time. And
Right.
then the next text, not in the same text, the next text I might send you would be middle finger and hey, dude,
Yeah.
yeah, because we're friends, or
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
what's up,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Yeah.
in that business, in that text. No, it's got to be 100% business.
Right. Right.
You got to double check. And I've had it happen with people that I've tried to bring in, where if they can't follow a simple instruction,
Right.
that's the interview.
Yeah.
Like, people come to watch my book, and I have a running joke with everybody who knows me. Meet me on the northwest corner of Amsterdam and 62nd Street. And that's the back entrance to Damrosch to get into the circus. So
Right.
that goes in every text or email I send to a potential sub. And
Right.
I can't tell you the number of times that I'll get a text, hey, I'm by the fountain. Hey, I'm over on 65th. And it's like, I don't know these people. And the very last text they have on record from me says exactly when and where to meet me.
Yeah.
And so they can't even take the time to scroll up. It's not
Yeah.
even in a different place.
Yeah.
If you look at the text right before when you just texted me, it says exactly where to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you can't do that, how are you going to sub a show for me?
Yeah, 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 yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. It is so important to, number one, get this communication straight, and
Yeah.
what that is concerned, also, like, leave no stone unturned. Meaning,
Yeah.
there are. Having said that, let me just put one caveat out there.
Yeah.
There are questions that are absolutely warranted, that need to be asked,
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah.
And
Ask for
at the same
clarification.
time, there are questions that don't need to be asked if the information is already out there. Okay,
Yeah.
so the northwest corner of 62nd and Columbus, Amsterdam, whatever it is
Yeah.
very, very precise information. There's
Yes.
no two ways about that, right?
Yes.
So all of that speaks to the business side of things, to your communication, to your first introduction, which now brings us to,
Yeah.
diversifying the efforts between being a player and being a contractor, right? Because now we already one step. Let's stick with that scenario, right? The contact has been made, the communication was clear, everything was understood. Okay, so now we are in the situation where you, Kristy, as the reed player, are also the contractor, right? And it was my assertion with diversifying your efforts that whole business has pretty much done a 180, 360, call it what you will, right? It has
Yeah,
changed, right? And
100%.
which is a normal thing. Like, I'm a big believer in change being the only thing constant, right?
Yeah,
So,
true.
having said that, wouldn't it behoove us as musicians to change our definition of what it means to be a musician?
Yeah.
To, in other words, just like you have done as a reed player, branched out with all the experience that you have as a reed player, branched out and started something new. So what is your take on that? What would be your take on it?
I think, it's interesting that you brought up your construction job, because one of the things that I did pre-pandemic, I have a love of home improvement and doing things on my own. And
Yes.
so it wasn't necessarily a career path, but I volunteered for a while for Habitat, and I would
Right.
go to sites in Brooklyn and Queens, and then just like on my day off, just
Yeah.
work construction with,
Yeah.
on these sites just for fun.
Yeah.
Also a good cause as well. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think what that highlights is finding your passions.
Yeah.
And so for me, home improvement, if I wanted to do something similar to what you're doing, I could.
Yeah.
For me, it's relaxing. So I don't want to combine those. That's like my stress relievers to go
Right.
build something.
Right.
But I really love math. I come from a family of CPAs and business
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the
Mm-hmm.
only musician,
Right.
but spreadsheets, math, contracts, details, I nerd out building Excel payroll templates from scratch.
There we
I'll
go.
take, yeah, like I took the Broadway agreement and I spent months
Mm.
just pouring over and learning a multitude of different, taking Excel classes to really beef up and learn, reading that contract, from nose to tail, like many times, and nerding out about every little scenario and detail. And you know what? I still have certain things like with the new COVID agreement,
Right.
where people are paid up to 8 shows if they have COVID, but it says in the new agreement that, and this is 1% of every Broadway payroll gets paid into the sick pay fund at AF
Right.
of M.
Right.
The agreement absolves them of paying that 1% for just the COVID shows. So I had to come up with new, like, this is the stuff I nerd out to.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
cool, I need a new column and I need a new formula so that it takes just the right, but it can't affect the media agreement, but it can affect this and it can't
Right.
affect, because it's a snowball when you're on that level. And I geek out. I'm not
Right.
going to lie. Like,
Right.
I'm excited when that happens. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm currently building with the new off-Broadway agreement because I've got a couple off-Broadway shows that are coming in.
Mm-hmm.
And so redoing, there's a new not-for-profit agreement. And so
Mm.
building templates,
Yeah.
redesigning, figuring out ways to simplify and to make it easier for in-houses and,
Oh,
you know,
that's so fantastic. That
yeah,
because I was on the other end of that one time with Spring Awakening, where I was the in-house
yeah,
contractor,
yeah,
and at the time this was, maybe this was when Excel was starting to become like the industry norm, right?
yes,
And at, I barely can work a computer. Excel at the time was completely outside of my reach,
sure,
and there was also no help. There was no templates, no nothing,
right,
right? So
right,
you kind of had to calculate everything once a week, and
yes,
that's what I ended up doing, and it worked
yeah,
out. But I know that kind of work is so important. Let me circle back to one thing you said, and that was
sure,
finding your passions, right?
yes,
And that is, and I think you made a great transition from like, my passion is home improvement, but at the same time, it's also math, right?
yeah,
And therefore, the experience, and just want to highlight that to the audience because I want to make sure that everyone gets that. The experience that you gained as a working musician, together with realizing that there is another passion here, right?
yeah,
Meaning math, home improvement, whatever, led you to branching out and being a contractor. So
yeah,
now you have these two paths happening at the same time, right?
yeah,
The operating word is realizing that you have different passions, right? Realizing that we are all
yeah,
multifaceted beings and therefore we have different passions. That's just that's part of what it means to be human, perhaps. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
You know, so it's so important for people to hear that. That is really, and that seems to be a continuing thread throughout these conversations that I have with people who have branched out. So that's fascinating for me.
Yeah.
Please continue. I don't
Yeah.
want to interrupt you
No,
too often.
no, but I mean, we need to do this as just humans in
Yeah.
general. You know,
Yeah.
we can't just do one thing.
Yeah.
We don't eat the same thing every day. We don't want to look at the same thing every day. We need some structure and
Yeah.
some diversification
Yeah.
just to exist as humans and to be made whole,
Right.
you know.
Right. Right.
And if you can turn that into either a really awesome hobby or a side hustle or a new career path,
Yeah.
or then great.
Yeah. Yeah. By
And
all means.
that's what's happening here. I think for me with contracting, it's all of that math stuff. There is also, which may lead us or be a way to bridge between the two questions that you wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
I feel being a woman in a very male dominated instrument choice and
Yeah.
world that I have had questions, concerns, and I don't want to say I know how to do this better,
Right.
but I'm coming at it from the perspective of being not the norm.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
with that comes a different side of knowing the job and the
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And I think that honestly, my take on when we were talking about diversity, I want to switch now to like the actual diversity within a pit, not,
Right. Right.
diversifying our lives. I think that my answers would probably surprise some people how I feel about this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that groups like Muse and Maestro are being unfortunately painted with a brush that is not relevant to what they're actually trying to achieve. And if you want to jump into that now, we can.
Yeah, yeah. No, let's
Yeah.
do that. Let's do that right away because
Yeah.
we have covered the
Yeah.
diversifying your efforts in terms of being a working musician and being a contractor.
Yeah.
For what it's worth, your answers are the most succinct that I've ever heard
Oh,
so far.
well, you're very sweet.
It's
I've
true.
I've spent a lot of time thinking about that. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, I like, as I said before, my job now is to be an advisor, and the best advisors that you can have are the people who get the most information, learn the most, and are able to provide the most complete or expanded answer that then you can make a choice from. I want you to be as educated, and therefore I have to educate myself about everything and to explain things. And like, even on that, you approach the Muse meeting with Tino,
right?
There was a point where he started to explain something that he has known for a really long time, and
let's
I kind of
sorry, Kristy, to jump in, but let me just give the audience somewhat of a context, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
We're now going into Broadway Uncovered, right? With Broadway Uncovered, I tried to highlight Black musicians. I tried to highlight female musicians who have been active in the musical theater world, who are not the norm, right? We are not the ones, and I do count myself as a Black musician, as part of that group. We are not the ones who get highlighted, right? We are not the ones who get seen as the pit musicians or the orchestra musicians or whatever. I tried to get several perspectives on that same situation. I talked with the former president of 802, Adam Krauthammer. I talked with several contractors as well. Talked with actors. How does the situation present itself to them? If they look down into a pit and they see nothing but white male faces looking back, right? I talked to producers, right? Very, very important. Interestingly enough, it's the highest watched video on my YouTube channel with over 4,000 views. That alone is pretty deep, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing: how does this? Because the backdrop to Broadway Uncovered are racist hiring practices that have been happening in New York, have been happening probably all over the states.
Yep.
The USA. This
Yep.
has a bad history. And how does that introduce itself to you? What is your perspective on that? How does it, come into your field of vision, so to speak?
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking and putting together some pilot initiatives, some things that are going to be unfolded over the next year, hopefully, on some off-Broadway shows and on the Broadway scene.
Right.
The most important thing that I think I can say here, and that's why I said, like, I think it would surprise certain people, my view on this.
Right.
My view is that I feel that currently people are looking for the quick, easy solution to appear to be diversifying, and they are doing a great disservice by not setting people up for success. And basically, the priority right now feels like we want a really good band picture, a really good band photo.
Right.
We don't care what happens after that. And that is really unfortunate.
Right.
And one of the things that when we were on that muse meeting with Tino, I got a little heated.
No, as you should. Listen, I watched it afterwards, and I have to also, side note, let's just say Winston Roy is a fucking saint, okay?
Yeah,
because
he's great.
He kept it together, okay?
I didn't, but he did.
No, when faced with a person opposite you who was uber aggressive, he kept it together, and he just completely took the wind out of that person's sails, out of Tino's sails, and I thought that was so well handled. I just want to give a shout out to Winston, because I would not have been able to do that.
No, and I wasn't, but the thing is, I actually have great respect for Tino,
right?
But I also think that he has some areas, like all of us, where he could use a different perspective and potentially learn from other people. I am in the same position. I learn something new every day. That is not a dig at him in any way.
Right.
He has really good knowledge of contracts, precedents, the reasons why we are in certain places, where he could grow, and where I think all of us learned to grow a little bit over the last couple of years is what that diversity actually looks like. What does access actually look like? And what got me upset initially in that discussion was he was bringing up forgive me for generalizing a term. Of course, this is like, it's just the way to, that there were certain white men who were the established players that had been reaching out to him to complain about being replaced.
Right.
And it's something that I've dealt with head on. I've gotten in arguments with multiple people, and it's fine.
Same here.
Yeah. And side note, and you can edit this if you want, but everyone knows you're a fantastic musician, a fantastic player. One of the things that has always been in my heart, and I tell people this story often, is and I don't know if we want to say what the show is, but you were on a Broadway show where the band was on stage. Mm-hmm. And you and everyone else was told that no women were allowed to sub in that.
Memphis.
Yep. Yeah. I didn't want to go there.
I've said it many times on this channel.
So and side note that many of the team music, like the higher ups, are people that are now in Muse, and so part of me is like, hey, I'm here for you.
Yeah.
Where were you for me?
Right.
Because that was some BS.
Yeah.
But anyway, what I want to say about George to the audience is what you don't know about him, so I'm going to toot his horn for him, is that he tried very hard to fight the system, because there was a fantastic woman of color bass player who is still a very fantastic woman of color bass player.
Yes.
And works around town, and I try to hire her all the time. She keeps turning me down. Can you put in a good word for me?
I will.
Okay, she is a badass. Anyway, he tried to get her on the sub list. I think she even came and watched. Is that correct? And then you got the smackdown from management.
I got the smackdown. Yeah, I got the smackdown.
And that was some serious BS. Not to mention, they hide behind it's a casting issue because they're on stage. Okay, I hear you.
Yeah.
But casting, do your research. There were women players in those bands in that time. I mean,
Yeah.
if you were to say to me, we're doing a show about the Beatles, we have to have 4 guys, I hear you, because
Yeah.
historically the Beatles were guys.
Yeah.
Like, I understand we're not going to flip the narrative and be like, okay, we're going to,
Yeah.
Ringo was a woman.
Yeah.
We can't do that because it's
Right.
history. But
Right.
if you're going to present that you've done your research, then do your research, because
Yeah.
I can give you names of the women who were playing during that time, during that era. And
Yeah.
you didn't do your research. And now you are, not you, the directors, the higher ups didn't do their research and
Which
then
I
went with the,
which I
did
did,
you?
by the way, yeah, because I sent like a
Of
long
course you did.
email.
Of
I
course you
sent,
did.
I mean, I come from a musical background, so I know the people, sometimes
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah.
who had those jobs, right?
Yeah.
They were part of my
Yep.
upbringing, right? Male,
Yes.
female, black and white. I
Yep.
know all of this. Like this
Yeah.
is ingrained in me, right? Plus,
Yep.
I'm coming from, even though my parents were married throughout their marriage, like up until the end, I do come from a background of a working mom. So it
Yeah.
was, it just totally went against everything that I
Yep.
am. There's
Yeah.
just no two ways about that. And I knew who these women were. I knew who
Yeah.
Melba Liston was, and
Yeah.
all of them, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, this is not right.
No.
This is a rewriting of history. Again,
Yeah.
this is a total side note to what happened, like, almost 10 years ago now. But it's
Yeah.
important for the audience also to get that out of, to get the context of where
Yeah.
where we're coming from.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And so, for me, like, I've always kept that in my, like, whenever I see you or your name comes up, like, that's the first thing that comes into my heart is like,
mm,
that you're one of the good guys, that you're
oh,
one of the people that will recognize the power that you have, and you will try to use it to help and defend other people when it's
I
the right thing to do.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you. I mean, but it's got to be a group effort. And again, going back to the established players who are complaining that they're being replaced,
Yeah.
my idea and all of my initiatives and things that I am working on right now, I don't want to exclude them.
Right.
I want them to be the main resource.
Right.
I want those established players to be the ones driving the bus. I need them. I don't want to not hire a great musician who has a ton of experience. I
Yeah.
want them to take some recommendations for me for one of their subs,
Right.
to be this 22-year-old who needs some extra help.
Right.
That's what I want. I don't want to take a 22-year-old who has 0 subbing experience on any level and hand them a Broadway chair. That
Yeah.
is not the answer to this problem.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
fact, it's disrespectful to think that that is even a reasonable answer to this
Yeah.
problem.
I do
This
agree.
issue, I mean, the issue of diversity on every level we're discussing, whether we're talking about ageism, whether we're
Yeah.
talking about racial issues, gender, sexual identity, what we are talking about, we don't change the system. What we do is we change the access that people have to the system.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
we start way earlier than a bleeping at Broadway chair,
Yeah.
because that serves no one, including the person you think you're helping, by setting them up to fail.
Yeah.
So I'm, on some level, as I'm learning a new job, I'm also sort of redefining what that job means to me.
Mm.
And so one of the things that I'm doing is setting clear expectations, training sessions. I just got permission from the exec board. I already did it for 6, but I'm doing it for my upcoming shows, where I pay the musicians and I get the band in a room and I teach them the Broadway 101, the business stuff that we were talking about. Not playing. They're already hired for the gig.
Right.
I need them to know how, and even for the experienced players like you, I need you in the room too. Sure, you've had shows,
Yeah.
what to do, but I want you in the room when I'm training, because this is like, you get to mentor the newbies.
Yeah.
I want your input too. I don't know everything. I'm just setting up a structure where we talk about,
Right.
the expectations of being a shareholder. And then, but I need you.
Yeah.
I need you to help me. I need
Yeah.
you to help the youngins. we all have had mentors in our lives. The
Yeah.
people, I like to say, I can tell you right now, everybody who rolled up a newspaper and swatted me on the nose when I was a bad puppy,
Yeah.
and then came in and gave me a bear hug when I did it right.
Yeah.
And that was everything to my development as a player.
Yeah, yeah, no, that is so important. I think I had a conversation with another musician where that exact point came up, and it was, well, I was given the benefit of a doubt at some point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would only behoove me to
Yeah.
give other people the benefit of a doubt, right? So
Yeah.
in seeing that, having that as sort of the backdrop to what you just said, that there's no question of replacing a certain group of
Mm-mm.
musicians, but there is a
No.
question of including everyone into that, and out of that inclusion, coming up with a new model, or with a new, forgot what the word is really, but with a new census, so to speak, as what this
Yeah.
community really can be.
Yeah. And I think the irony in all of this, and I started to bring this up with Tino during that meeting, is that the established players are wanting to point the finger at Muse and Maestra,
Right,
and
right,
that we're causing this uproar. The irony being that the people who are replacing the established players are the current people in power, because they don't know a better way to get us to diversity other than checking off a box.
right,
So the irony is, they're not mad at me. They're mad at the white producers, the people who have been in charge for the
right,
last 20, 30 years, that don't know how to pivot,
right,
because they've been doing it one way for so long.
right.
They're choosing a knee-jerk reaction. Well, I'll find one person that checks off some boxes, and I'll just put them in and look. I see I'm diverse.
Yeah,
Those are the people that the establishment should be frustrated with,
yeah,
because they don't see the bigger picture of how to make this actual change happen. And also, let me be clear that this actual change takes time, effort, money, you name it, and
yeah.
it's not sexy to do it that way.
No.
It's
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah,
long-term problem,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
in it for the long haul.
yeah.
I mean, even like when I was presenting these ideas, to the exec board, it was like, well, okay, so you're wanting to pay the musicians for this training. And I'm
Right,
like, yep. And they're like, well, what are you getting out of this? I'm like, less headache. And they're like, no, are you getting paid for it? And I'm like, no, I'm already paid for it.
right,
I'm a contractor.
right.
That's part of my job. A
Mm,
manager should set expectations, clear expectations for their employees. I'm already paid to do that.
yeah,
I'm going to make your lives and my lives easier by putting it. I'm putting up all this stuff. I'm in the process of designing my website. All of this is going to be free on my website.
yeah, yeah. Level
How
setting.
to
No,
how
so
to be a
important.
shareholder, how to
Yeah,
sub,
yeah.
how to do this, how to network, all of that's going to be free.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, this ties in with so many points that I've had these conversations with. One thing being that coming from a black musician's perspective, there are a lot of half truths when it comes to, or myths, that when
Yeah.
it comes to, let's take theater out of the picture.
Yeah.
Let's think about like joining the union. You know, oh, when you join the union, you can't play any other gigs anymore. That is not exactly true, right?
No.
That's just not what's happening. Yes, it is somewhat of a rule at AFM, but it's not a local 802 rule, right? You can still do other gigs. That's just what it is, right?
Yeah.
So all these myths perpetuate that, groups other than white and male do not get into the position of, in the long run, a musical theater engagement, or whatever that might entail, right?
Yeah.
So what you're doing by redefining your job is huge. That's brilliant, Kristy. I
Yeah.
didn't even know that. That is brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Oh,
I'll
that
send you
is
I have a Google slide presentation. I'll send it to you. You're
awesome.
welcome to
No,
take what you
most
want.
definitely. Because also, let me let the audience know that I've done this now for a little over 15 years or something, meaning the musical
Hmm.
theater gig.
Yeah.
And there are so many question marks when it comes to what we are allowed to do, what we are
Yeah.
supposed to do. Um, what our responsibilities are, who has the authority to tell us, meaning the musicians, what and at what time and
Yep.
concerning what. All of these things there are so many rumors, myths flying around that
Yeah.
are, I was an in-house contractor. I read the contract at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is not founded in anything.
No. And some of it, honestly, and you heard me allude to this with Tino during that Muse thing. Some of it's even just in the bylaws.
Yeah.
And who has time to read the AF of M bylaws and then the 802 bylaws and then because they're, I at a certain point, and I still have so much to learn.
Yeah.
And but kind of like music, the minute you think you know everything, you're done, right?
It grows.
Yeah. I mean, I'm never going to know everything about this industry, and I'm trying. There's this one of the changes for me is that the contractor stuff is endless, and I don't mean it in I have so many gigs I'm contracting. What I mean is the learning and the knowledge and the things I could be doing,
right,
as opposed to playing a gig where the gig starts at 8 and it ends at 11.
right.
So your calendar is, I'm booked from this spot and the travel time. I could sit at my computer for a week and still not get everything done, is what I mean in terms of the endless. Because, there's stuff there's the putting out of fires, the priorities that need to happen right now.
Yeah.
But I need to learn more about the AFFM bylaws. I need to learn more about the pamphlet B agreement.
Right.
And
No, this is so important. So important.
Yeah.
This, again, it kind of ties in, and that's why I wanted to talk to, just letting the audience know, I wanted to talk to Kristy about both of these subjects, right?
Yeah.
Because they are somewhat interconnected and they do cross-pollinate each other, right?
Yeah.
Meaning diversifying your efforts and uncovering Broadway, or Broadway Uncovered, however I named that at the time. It's really important to realize that there is no, first of all, there is no magic wand that needs to be waved and all of a sudden things work out. That's kind of, I liken that to what you described in terms of taking the easy way, and let me just get one person of color into this pit, or one woman over here, and I'll be diverse. That doesn't work, right? You're not doing
No.
the situation.
You're not making any change. In fact, you're reinforcing negative stereotypes by watching that person fail.
Exactly.
Because then I tried.
Yeah.
I hired a Black person. It didn't work out. So now you've painted, all people of color as incapable because you didn't do your job of preparing that person or recognizing where that person's level. For me, having the Big Apple Circus book for years gave me a really great advantage because I was getting youngins, newbies, and having to start from scratch. And I'd be like, look, have you ever subbed on anything? Okay, here we go. This is what your job is.
Right.
And they either succeed or not, but I can't say that I didn't provide the information they needed.
Yeah. No, that's the biggest thing. And also I should let the audience know the Big Apple Circus is a circus that's based out of New York City. And it is, I've done that gig for a number of years as a bass sub, and that is one of the hardest gigs out there. There's no two ways about it. I always tell people, if you really want to get your reading chops together, the Big Apple Circus is where you, let me generalize, even though that might not be correct, but a circus gig is really where it's at. Okay, because
that one,
you need to catch cues that your conductor only sees out of the corner of his or her eye, and you need to catch that cue while reading some unison line with the reeds, and trying to time it where an acrobat is making where an acrobat is basically flying across the circus. So
and you have to time it when they land the trick. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, is an incredibly skillful, labor-intensive, and exciting. And I also want to convey that to the audience. It is exciting to be at that skill level. to be
Yes.
able to pull that off. Like, you will walk, if you play a good show at the circus, you will walk a foot or two above the ground at the end of the gig. If
Yes.
you if you're not tired, if you're not,
If
so
you're
exhausted.
and also take into account the horse manure on the bottom of your
That's,
shoe
yeah, that's so
elevates you a little bit too. So sorry.
it's true.
Got to
It's
bring your own
totally true.
shovel though.
No, no, it's
Provide your
totally
own shovel. No, I love that gig. Technically, I'm still on the contract.
right.
This was, we have a 1-year deal this year, and we were allowed to take. I just don't have the time,
Yeah.
but I stay in close contact with those guys. And honestly, even if I end up not doing it again, I've already talked with the band leader about using that as a training ground for some newer people,
Yeah.
and being a part of recommending people and steering them,
Yeah. Yeah.
to get this kind of experience. Because, as our industry is closing, like I remember subbing and sitting next to, the legendary Lawrence Feldman at
Mm.
Chicago. And he is probably one of the most well-known reed doublers in our world.
Mm.
Fabulous, amazing player. And this was 15 years ago. And I was sitting next to him at Chicago, maybe even almost 20. And he was like, oh, 10 years ago, I would have been able to use somebody like you. And this was 15 years ago,
Wow.
that he's saying to me. So really, we're now at 25 years from right now.
Yeah.
I would have had great use for someone like you 10 years ago, but the
Wow.
work's drying up.
Mm.
So now here we are. Like, so we don't have those B and C and D level gigs and Latin bands and this and that to
Right.
get people out there and to get these kind of gig skills.
Right. Right.
They don't exist. So now we have to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And some of those ideas, I want to get a Broadway reading band together at the Union, the way the jazz bands gets together on Wednesdays, in the club room, and let's let people sit in and let's pick a show or pick a composer, read through these charts, and and just so that you can get somebody in a section, and you can get, because I know another thing with all of this talk of like bringing access and new people, there are groups that really want to do auditions for Broadway shows.
Right.
Having gone through the Radio City audition process for years and years and years, I actually think that that's a bit of a mistake. It doesn't take into account a lot of things, basically, unless you are very careful about the material that you're providing,
right,
and who's playing it and releasing it like at the exact same moment. So everyone has exactly the same amount of time to prepare their excerpts and blah, blah, blah. You're going to end up with, you don't know how they play in a section.
right,
You don't know how they get along with other people.
right,
You don't know how their ears are. All you know is that they can play something flashy for 3 minutes.
right, right.
And that's problematic to me.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I think that the whole auditioning process is, I myself have not, I maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but I've never won a single audition in my life.
You've won an audition to my heart.
Thank you,
George.
Kristy. I appreciate that. But
come on,
I haven't got a single job through an audition, right? I got my jobs through word of mouth, and people knowing me from experiences, from playing together, from working my way into a group of contacts that has worked out well with me.
Yeah.
So having said that, the whole audition process, I'm very hesitant to believe in it, simply because it very often doesn't. It ends up not being an audition, but more a casting idea.
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, now we're really going into territory where we're being hired by what we look like. I mean, I thought we were past that, at least.
There is one thing, and I'm torn, and this would be an interesting conversation to have with Tino at some point moving forward. The right of first refusal in all of the agreements, that might be where we make reasonable language changes. The 802 workshop agreements and off-Broadway agreements. Like for off-Broadway, it's a very limited amount of time that you could fire somebody.
Right.
On Broadway, it's 8 services.
Right.
Off-Broadway is even shorter.
Right.
And I'm not ready to give up on somebody that quickly.
Yeah.
They're on
Yeah.
an off Broadway or a workshop for a reason.
Right. Right.
And I want to be able, I remember getting in a conversation with Adam about it. I was like, you got to because I can't hire somebody for a workshop,
Right.
because if it doesn't work out, I have to use them if it moves forward.
Right.
I understand why the right of first refusal is there. They want to protect, like, if I hire you and pay you crap for workshop and then it goes to Broadway and I'm like, screw you, I'm going to hire my buddy now
Right.
who didn't want to work. I understand why it's there.
Right.
But
Right.
there has to be a give in there somewhere,
Right.
that this person, like, I want to give you a month or two
Right.
to figure out, and when we finish the workshop and we finish the off-Broadway show, maybe we part ways.
Yeah.
Maybe I say, look, George, you did really great. We're going to Broadway. I want you to be the first call sub, but I don't think you're ready for the Broadway chair. I mean, there's got to be a way to do that, because otherwise we can't take chances on new people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
yeah, there's so many situations that
yes,
have come to my door. As a player in the community,
yeah,
where I've never had a Broadway job, I've never had a show. Now I have a show, and I'm supposed to find subs, and I don't know
yeah,
where to even start to look. Right, which is
yeah,
the end result of which can be the end result of right of first refusal, right? Which is a very, very valid, and please, if the audience, I hope that the audience understands that, like, neither one of us is against that, right? Okay, it's very important.
But it's a huge block.
Yeah.
I have very close friends who are music supervisors and music directors, and we talk about this often, because it's like, I would love to give an opportunity to this person.
Right.
But if it doesn't work out, then we are stuck with this person, and it's really hard to get somebody removed. And I'm very pro union, very pro musicians, and saving work for people, but there's got to be some sort of give.
Yeah. I mean, this is, as this also speaks to the point that we are redefining what the parameters are, right?
Right.
We are and hopefully, there is going to be a redefinition. Let me put it this way, because who knows whether what we do is really that substantial or catches somebody's ear. I think it does. I think these conversations are important. Yet we can't look into people's heads and see whether that turns a screw, or whether that really makes them think differently, right? Man, Kristy, this is awesome. This is really, really, really deep stuff.
I do want to bring up one initiative. So another initiative that I'm starting to work on, and I believe we're going to be premiering it with the show Suffs, which is short for suffragists, which is the Public's. Shayna Taub wrote a musical about the suffragist movement. So that's starting at the Public in March, off Broadway. But I'm starting it's like my subbing initiative, where basically it's a workshop. We're going to have musicians sign up, people who don't work on Broadway, someone who wants to learn about being a sub.
Yeah.
So we're going to accept applications and pick like one person and pair them with anyone in the band who wants to be a part of this program, and give them access to a rehearsal, give them access to a tech rehearsal, give them access. And then once the show is up and running, they can shadow a show and get all the subbing materials. And then I'm budgeting to pay the regular and also pay the mentee, at least minimum wage. I'd love to do more, so that, we pay people to learn how to make French fries in this country. Yeah. Why wouldn't we pay them to learn, something that is, artistically amazing and a passion? So the idea then is that they will get a lesson. Like if you were the bass player and I were paired with you, you give me everything I need. I go away for a couple of weeks, and then you and I have a private lesson that we're both paid for. And I play the book for you.
Ooh, that is a great idea.
So there's no promise that
Yeah.
you get to work. That is the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
But I mean, if I'm kind of happening a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe I get to sub a show the last week of the run.
Yeah. Why not?
Maybe you're like, you're not ready for this show, but you sound really good doing the rock thing. My friend is over at Jersey Boys. Let me put
Right.
in a good word for you. Like, this is the work that we need to be doing.
Yeah, yeah, we need to get people into the community. Let's also not forget, and this is kind of tying in with the conversation I had with
Yeah.
Adam, that, you know, back when, say, art, right? My father, when he was active, right? 802 was like 20, 30,000 strong.
Mm.
Now, which is also, let me put that into context, like 70s, 80s, going into the 90s, right?
Yep.
Here we are in the aughts and in the tens and whatnot, in the 20s. We have shrunken to, what is it now, 7,000?
Yeah, I was gonna say between 7 and 8.
7 and 8,000, right?
Yes.
So it is imperative, like this whole cliquish behavior that has kept people out of musical theater jobs, or out of a lot of jobs, because they don't fit the norm, they don't fit the white male paradigm, or whatever the paradigm might be, at the same time is responsible for declining numbers at 802. And with declining numbers comes inevitably less power, less possibilities of negotiations, less firepower behind you. That's just what it is. The big thing about a union, and I am, like you, a union person through and through. I've been a union member for over 20 years at this point. The big thing about a union is that we have strength in numbers, and yet these behaviors that are keeping a lot of people outside of the current job market are at the same time shrinking the union, right? So
and I'll do you one better. I understand, or I agree 100% with everything you've just said, and I will add to that I feel like where we can grow is not the huge, like, oh, the Broadway contract, or movie contracts. It's all of the little jobs. The power is in all of the little, like, unionizing the Big Apple Circus gigs of the world, and this and that. That's what's going to save the health benefits, grow us in numbers. We have to think outside the box and come up with different organizing ideas. And to encourage the smaller stuff, because that's really where the most, this was actually really interesting. A few years, maybe about 8 years back, they changed the health benefit, and there was this big meeting, and everybody went, and it was very heated. Like, basically, the people who were on Broadway chairs were now going to have to pay like $100 a month to stay on the plan A plus, or whatever it was. You used to be 100% free if you were a chairholder, right? And all the Broadway people, which was probably at the time 200 or 300 people, whether you're talking subs and regulars, all the chairs, they were just mad as hell. Why do we have to pay? Our money's been going into the health benefit for, why do we have to pay, right? So check this out. I thought about it for a minute. I'm a math nerd. So I went home, I thought about it, and I called Martha Hyde, and I said, how much does a union spend on health insurance for the plan every year? Like, roughly, because she's was on the committee and is very knowledgeable. And she said that at that time, that the health benefit plan cost 802 like $10 million a year. And I said, cool. I said, how much of that are the Broadway producers funding? Like, what do we get in total from Broadway?
Right.
And she said, like, I think it was like maybe 2 million.
Wow.
And I said, okay, of the people who are on Plan A plus, how many of them are working on Broadway? So basically what we were learning was, it was all of the little club dates, Big Apple Circus, all of those where none of us qualified on those gigs, that were actually funding all the Broadway people all of this time.
So it was exactly the opposite.
It was exactly the opposite. So all of the little jobs and the people who never qualified, but their one-off health benefit for a club date here and there, was keeping the fund floating and was actually paying for the Broadway people.
That is
And
incredible. Right.
yeah, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I get it, but like, the whole point of the union is that, as you said, we're stronger in numbers. And when we start thinking about the greater good,
Right.
and sometimes that sucks. And yeah, we sound like bleeding heart socialists. Yeah, guilty as charged.
So be it.
Don't
I
care.
don't
I
care.
mean, come on.
Anybody got a problem with that? Come
Yeah,
talk to me. That's
come talk to George, and I'll be right
exactly.
behind him. Yeah, but I mean, enough is enough. Like the people, there's a. I don't want to get too controversial than
No,
I
this
already have
please
been, but
don't even worry about it. This I've
but
said plenty of controversial stuff here.
yeah, we have to look out for each other. That's the whole point of the union,
Yeah.
And for me to be sympathetic to some of the more established, experienced players who have been in this industry longer than me, I need for them to also care about
Yeah.
me and my generation and the people who are younger than me and
Yeah.
that generation.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
needs to go both ways.
Yeah.
You
No,
know,
this is a very, very important point. This,
yeah.
to get like a rising tide lifts all boats. Is a very, very important saying that keeps coming into my mind, so to speak,
Yeah.
every time we talk about this, or every time this subject
Yeah.
has come up. So once again, Kristy, I don't know how to thank you enough. Seriously, this
Oh,
this is such a fantastic conversation, and I'm very, very grateful for you to take the time, let the audience know what's up with, on the one hand, diversifying your efforts, how you made that journey, how you continue to grow in that journey, and on the other hand, uncovering Broadway and kind of blowing that wide open in the most positive way, because it is, I mean, let's also not forget, this is an enormous creative output
yeah.
that we have here in the city, right? This
Yep.
studio jobs, it is debatable whether they still exist or not. I think that they have shifted, right? They have shifted from the big studios to home recording.
Yep.
That's where we are. The only
Yep.
constant thing in the universe is change. So this is
Yep.
what we need to do as musicians. Yet at the same time, the theater gig is still there, right?
Yep.
And it's not the only thing. There's, I yes, there are less job opportunities now than, say, 30, 40 years ago, or 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Absolutely, things change. But then
Yep.
I like to use the word shift more than anything else. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not one thing ends and then there is just less or there's nothing. No, it shifted. It moved
Yep.
from one thing into another thing, right?
Absolutely.
I think it's important to realize that. And, that's why, like, and also we should highlight organizations like Maestro. We should highlight organization like Muse. There's an organization that I'm a part of that I'm very, very proud of, called Tutti, which does exactly what you were talking about in terms of mentoring younger musicians, or
Yep.
people who are interested in this kind of work. There's not even
Yep.
younger musicians; they're my age just as much.
Yeah.
So it's all these organizations are out there. You know, I'm a member of all of them. I support
Yep.
all of them. Whether I agree
Yeah.
with them or
Yeah.
not doesn't really matter, right? I
No.
do support them because there need to be
Yeah.
numbers. That's important to
Yeah.
realize. So
Well, and one of the most important things that you're doing is dialogue. You're having these conversations
yeah,
because there are so many, like you were saying, half truths, misunderstandings. And that was a point that I tried to drive home to Tino during
yeah,
that Muse meeting. It's like, not the people that are upset they're being replaced have never come and talked with me
right.
about I mean, you heard me today. Did I say anything about replacing people?
No,
In fact, I want to reward them for
right,
being like, and that is my plan.
right, right, right.
I'm a member of Maestra. I'm a mentor for Muse.
Yeah,
I have been on many meetings with both of those organizations, and not once has anybody said we want to replace.
right,
Like, we're all on this same path. It
right.
is a misunderstanding that
Yeah,
the established players, it's fear.
yeah.
Listen, when
It
people are
is. Yeah,
fearful, they lash out.
yeah,
That's human nature.
yeah, yeah.
And the more dialogue, the more open conversations we can have, and to be honest and
Yeah,
have these
yeah,
heartfelt conversations, people can understand. Like, I don't want to replace you. I want you to use this young person
yeah.
who deserves a chance and try to help them the way you
Right.
were helped when you were young. That's it.
Exactly.
That's it. We
Exactly.
don't
This.
change the model. We don't
No.
change the system,
Yeah. 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 No. This.
you know?
You know, I always bring it back to when I got my first subbing job, which was at the Lion King, and
Yes.
Tom Barney was the one who said yes, right?
Yep.
And he already had 7 subs,
Yep.
and I was number 8, and he didn't need to say yes, right?
Right.
So fast forward, you know, this was when did I started in 2005, March 2005. If you ask any musician in New York who plays musical theater jobs, they will tell you the exact date when they played their first subbing job. That's how
Yep.
deep of an experience it is.
Chicago for Ken Hitchcock. Yeah. It was going way back. I think it was 99 or
There you go.
2000. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah,
But
but
yeah,
this it's that's how
I mean, we're
deep,
going back
like,
20 years.
it's
Yep.
really ingrained in you. So, you know,
Yep.
Tom was the one who said yes to me,
Hmm.
and he didn't have to, right?
Right.
And I, you know, the little that I can do, when I got a chair, I started saying yes to everyone.
Yep.
Because who am I to say no?
Yeah.
It's no. That's no is not a possibility in this
Yeah.
scenario.
Yes.
And this, of course, there is, you know, the understanding, which is very much, to your point, fear based, of okay, one hand washes the other. I'm gonna give you a subbing job, you're gonna give me a subbing job, we're gonna, you know, keep this between the two of us, or three, or whatever.
There's
It's,
always room for a little extra.
yeah, yeah, there is so much room, and there is so much,
Yeah.
there is enough work out there for to get people in and to give them the benefit of a doubt. All right,
Yeah.
that's really the important thing here.
Yeah.
And so once
Yeah.
again, Kristy, I cannot thank you enough. This was a
It's been great.
fantastic conversation. You know, I wish you all the best. I know that I'm gonna run into you on, what is it, 46th Street?
Yeah.
At least for
Absolutely.
another week.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
we can meet in the street. It'll be great.
Most definitely.
Awesome, dude.
So, Kristy Norter, thank you for being here today, and
My pleasure.
I'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, George. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure.